Colin, so as you noticed, I'm not Terry Land. He has sent his apologies. So as vice chair, I'll be chairing in his place. It's my first time, so do bear with me if I have to lean in and have Alan whisper something to me. So first of all, thank you all very much for attending this meeting. Item 427, apologies for absences, please.
Apologies from councillors Loretta, Jefferson and Environmental.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Item 428, the declaration of any disclosable pecuniary interests. Falls in the agenda in advance. If anyone has anything that comes up later on, you can declare it, not a problem. Are we all good? Fantastic. So item 429, the minutes of Corporate Service Committee. We've all seen the minutes. I've had a flick through. Is there any points on there anyone wants to address, or is everyone happy? All happy, fantastic. May I please have a proposer and a seconder for those? Thank you kindly. I've got Councillor Mitchell as a proposer, Councillor Wood as a proposer. Councillor Mitchell, it's going to have to be you now. I've said your name. Thank you.
Probably wasn't here.
Well voluntold. Thank you. Brilliant. I just need to squiggle on these. Right, so if the councillors all agree, if we may bring one of the items from the end of the agenda forward, just because we have Councillor Wright here, who's been working on something with our town clerk, just to save him sitting through the entirety. If you'd like to, that's absolutely fine, but
Well, I don't know.
I'm thinking you can then at least shoot off afterwards. So if everyone's happy to bring item 436 to the start so we can discuss it, fantastic, thank you. So item 436, a contribution and participation of London Lords Mayor's procession. So we had the item circulated. I will hand over to the town clerk and Councillor Wright on this one, please.
Okay, so this came about at the Joe Pearson's inauguration as High Sheriff. He was talking to City London Councillor, and they were saying how could they best use him in his position as High Sheriff to promote Thetford this year. And the suggestion was made all about having a Thetford community float in the Lord Mayor's procession. So with that, I was tasked to find out a little bit more, because the idea would be that we'd utilise Jones's van as a centrepiece, and then having a small Burrell engine on the back and steam to be tooting as you go around. But the main thing being that the Jones van is recognisable by the majority of people across the country, so we would draw attention to that, and then have characters associated with the town, Julep Singh and Boudica, Thomas Payne, and all those types of things. So that was just the idea. I then spoke to the lady who organised it, the pageant master's assistant, and she then gave me the information which we've now put in the paper in front of you. Obviously, there is a big cost associated with that. That is the community entrance. Normal ones are about £21,000 to get in, but we would qualify as a community one. That is up to 50 participants would be there, and you're allowed 16 metres of road space, which basically is a low loader. You know, you can get a vehicle on there for that. I did present this to the business breakfast last Wednesday to just see if there was any interest there, and also to raise awareness of it. In the audience was Jason Cole from Breckland, who then mentioned afterwards that he was going back to Breckland. He couldn't promise, but he thought he would be able to assist in some way. And obviously Joe Pearson was there, and the board is a potential funder as well. So Joe had sight of the paper that I prepared. Sonia then put the paper together in a more structured manner. And I think Joe came back with a suggestion of asking for 2.5, whereby it would be split 3 ways if you could get it that way. But open to any questions. I'm not driving this through any personal thing. It just came about an opportunity. We only have one Thetford High Sheriff, and let's just make use of that this time. Obviously, the mayor, town clerk, councillors, our MP, one would hope, would all be part of the procession, raising awareness. So the story would be not only on the day, but also press releases going out to make people aware that Thetford exists, that we've got all this history here, that people should be come visiting us, and also to give a little bit of sense of pride for people in the town to say, we've got something in the Lord Mayor's possession, we've got this, we're that good. So, you know, it's a hits on a number of fronts, but open to questions. David, I think you were.
Councillor Babon, please.
Okay, yeah, I liked it. I thought that's great. I wondered a little bit about the budget, because if we're going to do this, it's a very long day. People are going to be exhausted, people are going to need to eat, and people are going to be travelling and stuff like that. I think that'd be great if the budget would cover food costs and anything else like that. Just those sundries that makes it a comfortable day for everybody, rather than just pay for the fund to put the float in. The other sundries that go with it. I think that's a lovely idea.
I understand that though, because as we did participate as the Dad's Army Museum in 2017 as guests of the Workshop Company of Butchers. So you there right early in the morning, you then process, you have a midway break where you stop. And usually we were fortunate we were given lunch by the Workshop Company of Butchers when we did it, but you would have to provide some kind of sandwiches and what have you. And then at the end of the procession, obviously then people probably do need to have a little sit down and get back. Transportation is
costs.
is something.
Those.
Yeah. So when we went last time with the museum covered the cost of a small bus to take people down and brought them back, which obviously, you know, makes the most cost efficient way rather than paying train fares and whatever. The reason I've not gone for it is purely to try and get the entry fee in, and I didn't quite know whether this was going to fly or not. But I'll take on board that there will be need for that, and there will be some other extra costs, like the cost of the logo. We, as the museum, Dad's Army Museum, will probably pay for that or get somebody to source. We've got to utilise a recovery company that we haven't spoke to yet, but again, there's ways that we can hopefully finance the cost.
The Charles Burrell Museum might have a steam engine.
That costs so much.
It's so slow. Well, that's why I was hoping this miniature one, which we had for the
Yeah.
balloon on the back in steam, so creating some smoke and some noise with very little steam.
Councillor Blackburn, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it was just, I think I know what a low loader is, and I think probably through the Burrell Museum, there might be some contacts that
Okay.
we could,
Yeah, Joe has mentioned Saunders who.
yeah, we might be able to get it through them, because I know they use them for the steam engines. That is one of those ones.
A big lorry.
Big lorry, yeah.
Councillor Jeremy, please.
Yeah, I think we should be putting our heritage on a national stage. I think it's a really good idea. We should be shouting about what we've got. So this is a good opportunity. I remember a few years ago, I think it was Chelsea Flower Show, which at least somebody around the table had quite a role in musically. And that was, you know, a brilliant showcase of Thetford. So I think it's money well spent. Just on the actual recommendations, I mean, this ties in really nicely with the work of the Heritage and Events Committee that's, you know, really embraced heritage and started shouting about stuff. So I think the oversight of our involvement, especially if we're putting money towards it, should be done through the committee.
Are we proposing that as a change to item number 4, the delegated authority for the town clerk and the RFO to work with the council on the project, to delegate that to a committee instead, or the Heritage and Events Committee
Heritage and Events Committee.
rather than a subcommittee?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Does that mean then that I don't have to do any work?
You just have to dress up in a wig.
Just asking.
there's a subcommittee,
Paying the money and then.
more people to delegate to. There's a subcommittee. Okay, that's fine. I have a question, if I may. It's the finance part of us. I think we need to be very explicit that we can't sign or agree to anything until the external funding is guaranteed. So it doesn't, we've not paid a fee and it all falls back onto us to cover everything as a result of that. Is that something we can agree to in this meeting. And it's not a recommendation, but I think it is, it has to be. Okay, yeah, so as per the papers, we're pending the confirmation of the other funding tranche going. Sure, so it's the worst day not to bring my glasses, isn't it? Yeah, I can barely see the front row, let alone.
Sit all down.
Oh, see, look at this, there we go. Okay, brilliant, fantastic. And then my second question was, this maybe an Alan or a councillor, right? Who will bear any financial burden should the costs overrun?
Well, at this stage, for me, the 7.5 is all that we ask and commit to. Obviously, David's mentioned a budget to facilitate those who are attending. So we know the 7.5 is the cost, so that okay. But obviously, then the budget will, David was saying that there would probably need to be looked at to work up a number and how that would be shared amongst the participants, because there will be different groups being represented, and I think I haven't got that to hand, how much that would be.
Do you want to have a point?
When is it? Oh, sorry.
Yes, yep, David, please.
When is it?
This
When?
November the 14th.
Oh, God, a long time.
Yeah, it's just that we need to commit in.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's in the thing. That's the reason I'm working quite quickly at the moment.
Sonia, please, yes.
Can I say that if you then start and you got £7,500 and we pay that in, and then we maybe come back and look to see whether other businesses could contribute who are going to be using the float to cover the costs of the bus and the food and the sundries.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. If everyone sort of pitches in more, absolutely. Okay, any further points on this item? Procedure-wise, forgive me, do you want to do Councillor Jeremy's amendment, vote on that first, and then we go to the rest of recommendations? So Councillor Jeremy's recommendation is a slight change to number 4, which is a delegated authority for the town clerk and the RFO to work with a committee on the project. I think we agreed it was the Heritage and Events Committee. So may I have a proposer for that? Thank you, Councillor Jeremy, Councillor Blackburn, all voting on that one. Fantastic, thank you very much. Carrie, so then we'll just do them all as one big go if everyone's happy with that. May we have a proposer for the officer recommendations as a whole, including the amendment? David, and then Annie as a seconder, thank you. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Carried. You are freed, councillor, right? If you're more than welcome to stay.
All, and obviously any ideas in terms of characters would be, we can work up. I did speak to the Sikhs at the weekend, because obviously we don't want anybody blacking up, as Julep saying, and so they are happy to participate in a quite garish thing to look very much like it, and obviously with Sophia and that, they are happy to be part of our scheme, shall we say.
Yeah, I think it ties in with the heritage bids that we keep going for, and we have a very vast and rich cultural heritage in Thetford. So I think this is an excellent idea. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, because I had absolutely no idea about it. Thank you very much.
To pass, just have that a few weeks back. So, all right, well, love you and leave you all.
Thank you very much.
You.
Just say what I think he said.
There you go.
Oh, I see what you mean. I thought you
Sure, over to you. Very volunteered you for it.
yeah.
We do. We volunteer.
Feel like it.
Okay, we're moving on to item 430, please, which is the approval of assets purchased and the projects funded from reserves and grants. We talk about our reserves an awful lot lately. To receive and review the schedule of assets purchased and projects financed from our reserves and grants. So I will hand over to the Deputy Town Clerk on this one, please.
In recent years, we have spent a significant amount of money from our reserves. These big projects have happened. The 2 towers at Guildhall was in excess of 250,000. So what we have been doing is we haven't done a big budget every year like we did when I first came. We used to have these big £400,000 budgets and never get around to spend any money. One of the reasons is that there's such a significant time lag between identifying projects projects starting and projects ending. And I'm going to give an example of the pathway finance bridges. We submitted the parish partnership way back in 24-25, and in the 26-27 year will be the first time we hopefully we'll be putting a bridge in place and finishing that project. It's taken an inordinate amount of time because there's a whole lot of processes to go through. So most of the projects have been approved specifically by council, but there are some that have been done to delegated authority because we have specific reserves to meet certain expenditures. In terms of the spending on assets, included in the papers is the schedule here. The commercial heaters in the chapel, that was just part of the cemetery improvements. The Carnegie roof, this is the actual spending to get the permanent solution. We spent money in having temporary solutions. The two towers, 23,000, which is the new project. On the old two towers, we spent 176,000, so huge, significant amounts of money. And then we've got a couple of other projects. So that comes to 251,000. In terms of the projects, we've got interim solutions. I have to just say that this report came off the press so hot, I hadn't had a chance to verify all the numbers. So I do apologise that I've made some changes. But I had a project there, community wardens. That's actually sitting in the profit and loss account rather than reserves. So that changed by £10,000. But you can see that these are the projects that the master plan, the Carnegie stage that was recently approved, and all these have been funded. So what we've ended up with is a schedule that shows the contributions that we've made to our reserves, which has been relatively small, 75,000. We've received grants of 151,000 this year, of which 113 essentially comes from Historic England. So that's been a significant boost. We spent 251,000 on assets, 44,000 on projects, and that leaves a balance of 696,000 in our reserves. Our reserves are still coming down over time. And it's just something that really, as a boring accountant, makes me always quite scared because this money have set aside, the higher the risk is to the council.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I've got David.
Enhancements to the marketplace and stuff on the marketplace appear quite a few times, and they don't add up to whatever figure. What are the details of the £8,500 enhancements to the marketplace in addition to the trough and other bits and pieces?
So, okay, what we did is we developed a lower marketplace. So we added electrics to that.
Sorry.
We've had lighting put up, and we've had extra gazebos. Most of that is funded from a Beacon Council grant of just under £10,000. We spent 9,000 including that on that particular project.
I apologise. I was up at the top and couldn't see anything. I forgot about the lower bit. Sorry.
Thank you. Terry, please.
Yeah. I get Alan's point about spending reserves, and accountants obviously always like reserves as high as possible. However, I look at that list and think we've achieved some amazing things with that money. Some of it was long overdue, and some of it had dedicated reserves to do those things. Some of it was obviously ring-fenced grant funding. So I'm not concerned in that sense. And I'm really pleased to see that column there, grants received, £151,500 of external money brought in. If we hadn't spent some of our own money, we wouldn't have got those grants in. So, we're making that money go further. It would be helpful on the spending on assets table, just to add the narrative about what the two different amounts of Two Towers money is. I think you sort of mentioned phase one and phase two.
If you remember, the clock tower was only finished in the earlier part of the 25-26 year.
Yeah.
We were hoping to finish it by February. I think it only ended up being finished by May, June. And then the second last bit of work that we've done in the dormer window and on this clock tower at the back here. So that's really the two. We just kept tabs of it so that we make sure that we don't continue spending money on projects that are finished.
That's fine. If we sort of add just phase one or phase two to the table, just so we'll do that. I assumed it was capital and revenue, but I assume that just be useful to keep track. But I mean, I think the phase two particularly was the one that helped us get in the money from Historic England. So that's good to record that. But no, I think it's you know, it's about time we invested in our assets.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the reserves and grants fund? Yes, Councillor Jefferson, please.
I'll just briefly say thanks for actually pulling this together. I mean, when we've been spending a lot of money recently, I was very keen to look at something like this. And while we have been spending a lot, it is nice to know that we've not spent ourselves dry. And there is money there, and I completely take your point. But I support good point that, to be honest, we're doing a lot with it. And as long as we're keeping sight of this and being responsible in the way we manage it moving forward, I'm proud of the work we've done and proud of the fact that this sheet looks as positive as it does, in my opinion.
Okay, if we have no one else to speak on these items, I'll get a proposer second and we'll vote. So may I have a proposer, please, to approve this schedule of reserves? Councillor Jefferson, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Wood, thank you. All in favour? Any abstentions? Any against? No, fantastic. Carried with full council support. Rightio, moving on to item 431, the fourth quarter financial report.
Well, I have to tell you, this is the record I've ever produced a quarterly report. So I think I was churning it out on Friday morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, just putting the last figures together. There has been some changes between that and closing off the final records. And overall, income is lower by approximately £1,000. There were the final adjustments we processed this morning, but I haven't gone through and changed the schedules. It was just that there was expenditure and income that we just had to make some adjustments to. So the credibility of the report, I think the report still gives a clear indication of where we are from the financial perspective. The problem when you do cumulative quarterly reports is that you have to keep explaining the things that happened in the first quarter throughout the second, third and fourth quarter. There are a couple of historical things that have come back again, and you'll see it in the report. The temporary contracts of the public toilets, I think I've had to explain that at the last 3 times this report has been set aside. We've had problems with our vehicles, etc. And unfortunately, those things just we have to report on them because they come back. They'll hopefully clear again after this report, and we start in 26, 27. That won't be the case. Overall, every single quarter we have reported a surplus. It hasn't been a significant surplus. This year we're ending up with a surplus of about 30,989. I just want to make the point that if we hadn't had the surplus on the sale of our investments, when we sold off all our stocks and shares, we made a profit of 55,000. This figure would be a small negative figure. So we do have an accumulated deficit. It's come down. This will nearly get rid of that. So I'm just want to make councillors aware of that there's a 44,000 accumulated deficit. This 30,000 will bring that down to about 14, and hopefully next year that deficit will disappear. We've explained all the variances. It is exceptionally difficult to do. Just one last point so that you can make sense of the report. When we did the budget, we did it at a very aggregated level. So we'd aggregated a lot of costs. So the budget is paid at a high level. When we set up the accounting records for this year, we broke down a lot of costs into a number of significant line items. So therefore, there's variances, but you've got to understand when you go from a consolidated budget to a disaggregated budget, we didn't budget everything properly, and we have been doing that for many, many years. So that gives rise to a number of variances. The reassuring factor is that this 26, 27 year, the budget and the accounts will be on the same basis. So hopefully there won't be the significant number of variances that we had in this particular year. But overall, we have made it. I do sweat every time I prepare this report, because that's the only time that I get an assurance that we're actually on track.
Yes, David, please.
When I read this earlier, I thought that year-to-date surplus of 31,000 is like a paper surplus. Would it be prudent not to spend that because of the differences of the money coming in next year? Or is that not a surplus? It's a paper surplus on paper, but not a real surplus.
No, it is a real surplus, but what we have, what we have is our revenue account. You had a schedule of reserves in the previous thing. We also have a reserve called a revenue account.
So we sold 75,000.
And that had 44. So no, that had a deficit of £44,000. And when I came during the council, it was £80,000 deficit. So it's really just to get rid of that and ensure that that's surplus, because that's really, it's the history of our income, less our expenditure. And at the moment, our history is that we've spent more money than we've earned in income over the years. And it's just to rectify that so that we don't have a deficit on that we're basically funding from reserves.
Okay.
I know that doesn't make sense.
It just looked to me that that wasn't a real surplus.
There is a real surplus.
It is a real surplus, so we can spend it.
You can, but you'll see a grown man cry.
You were seeking to.
It just, forgive me, I'm not an accountant at all. I mean, with numbers, we're not an accountant, but okay.
I'll just cancel what I had earmarked for that 30 grand. So our town clerk doesn't quit. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, by the way.
Any other points from anyone? Yes, Councillor Jermich.
Well, first of all, I think it's a real achievement to get this done so quickly after year end. So I think it should be noted that Alan's worked particularly hard on this. And also the surplus of 31k. When I remember not so many years ago, regularly the year end figure was an overspend of anything between 50 and 100k a year overspend. So the fact that it's an underspend is obviously really good news. A bit of sort of finance technicality around cashing in reserves and all the rest of it, but actually I'd still much rather see a surplus than a loss. I mean, we've had some horrendous losses in the past. In terms of the recommendations, I assume, Alan, the default is that we note what we asked to do. The committee recommend the quarterly report to full council. Does that surplus now automatically transfer to reserves and presumably it goes in the general reserve?
No, we've got a revenue account reserve, which is it's like a company, you have an accumulated deficit or a surplus, which is your profit account, your accumulated profit account.
Yeah.
This will just go and offset the loss of 44,000 in the accumulated profit account.
Okay, so we don't need to sort of, note anywhere where it's going.
So what we do need to do is included in the narration is we've got a bad debt of 5816, which relates to the RBL. And that requires a specific resolution to authorise that. They had quite a big exposure. We've managed to recover some of that money. And we've got a whole lot of furniture and fittings, which if we had to dispose of, would reduce that number further. But I can't bank on that. That's a contingent asset.
Yeah. And just on that point, I mean, that's quite a significant debt to write off. I think the council would be wise to do that rather than to pursue the people that were there for the money. We could do, but I think we should be noting that effectively we're granting nearly £6,000, which is way above what we give to other local organisations. I think it's the right thing to do in this instance, but that is a significant amount of money.
David, please.
On that point, there's a difference between Royal British Legion and Royal British Legion Thetford.
Yeah.
I think I agree. I think we need to note that there is a difference. Yeah.
I think from my point of view, it's going to be a long, difficult, arduous task to try and get that money back as well. And the idea that it may not come easily. So if we introduce the idea of legal fees and so forth, it could end up costing us a lot more than that. And I do think it is the right thing to do for the organisation, considering they left. But we've got that as a recommendation. Are there anyone else? Would anyone else like to speak on the report? I have one quick thing before we go on. If not, no good. We have a lot of expenditure. I know we spoke at the last corporate services about what we would do to mitigate quite a large amount of that, and that was things like the rental for a car was only temporary due to the accident that occurred. The change of leases and so forth, and the electricity, and we had a big conversation about that. There's just quite a few things. I know one of the large expenditures, £11,000 on legal encampments. We had a discussion at full council about that. It was deemed at full council by councillors, it was too expensive to come up with something to try and prevent that, i.e. fencing. But as a rule, what are we doing as council staff and then with us as councillors to look at what our biggest expenditure is and try to mitigate that further? I understand if it can't be done, i.e. illegal encampments, there's really not much we can do to stop them. But do we have sort of plans or ways forward with the largest of our expenditure, which we're talking, you know, the Carnegie repairs? Again, we rely a lot on external companies. I'm convinced sometimes they see council and whack a zero on the end of it. Insurance, open spaces, do we shop around enough for things like our insurance and so forth?
I think what we've been trying to do is, one of the reasons of getting the accounts out so quick is that we can get into the new year very quick. So this morning I rolled over the accounts. We're now on the 26, 27. We've just got to load the budget into our Sage system and then we can start monitoring. We have, from a management perspective, we've really looked at improving our ordering and requisitioning system. That should be up and running, and that will help us control our costs. We've also had to, I had a discussion with the town clerk. I have to be really nasty at times, because if someone comes to me and wants a rent a motor vehicle, I'm going to go buy them a bicycle. I am not going to pay when our vehicles are getting damaged, etc., to thousands of pounds. We just can't put up with that anymore. So we are really getting, you know, a lot more, and there's a lot more scrutiny over shopping around for prices. Mm-hmm. So I think it's an ongoing process, but we are going to reduce our expenditure, and we are going to try to stay within budget on a lot more things than we have in the past.
Okay, thank you. And having these quarterly reports is really going to help us as well as we see them crafted. Forgive my ignorance, is the plan to have these come to the relevant corporate services meeting for the quarter? So we will see these quarterly reports.
Every other committee we report for the latest information that we have available. But for this, and even this committee, we had a meeting in June before we had done the quarterly report. We would give you a report for the 2 months up in May or June. But the quarterly report was a recommendation from the internal auditor, who just said we had to submit information to the council. And what we're doing is we're using this committee as a conduit to do that, so this committee can go through it and give its recommendation to full council.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. If we have no further questions, we shall move on. So there are two officer recommendations on this one. One is to approve the writing of the debt off from the RBL of £5,816, and number two is that we, as a committee, recommend the quarterly report. Is everyone happy to do them as one item? Fantastic. So may I have a proposer, please? Councillor Jeremy, and a seconder, please. Councillor Wood, thank you very much. All in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. Abstentions? No. Against? No. Brilliant. So moving swiftly on to item 423, financial regs. I will hand over this one to our, again, money man, our deputy town clerk, please.
Thank you, Chair. What we've done this time is we've actually gone through the model regulations. In the table, in the document that we've circulated to the members of this committee, we put the model financial regulation on the left-hand side and the changes that we've made on the right-hand side. Now, the reason we've made some changes is that these model financial regulations have to deal with a small little £8,000 a year parish council to a significant, largely sized town council. So what we've done is we put the rationale as to why we've added and taken away certain requirements. And we just thought it'd be a lot easier for the committee to have a look at that and to see what changes we've actually made, so that everything that comes up after the discussion will be represented. There'll be no deviations from what the model financial regulations are.
Can I thank you for doing it that way? Otherwise, I probably would have had an aneurysm trying to find the differences in the original paperwork without you breaking down what had changed.
There is one final change.
Appreciated.
This is paragraph 11.3. I hadn't had the chance to discuss this with the town clerk before setting up the agenda. So that has changed slightly, and I think we've got an improvement. What we had previously is in the kind of orangey colour, and then we just added improved it by having the council must approve remuneration changes to the town clerk remuneration, including increases due to performance. And excuse the spelling mistake. Go with that.
Yeah, I just thought it's better for the council as a whole rather than just one councillor to agree on any changes.
No, I think that's a really good suggestion. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for that, Sarah Clark. Do we have any comments on the financial regs? We don't. I flicked through and I tried my hardest when I was reading myself. I've got Councillor Jeremy, then Councillor Jefferson, please.
Just on 5.8 and 5.9, the recommendation is to change the threshold from £3,000 to £5,000 in terms of seeking additional quotes for work. The recommendation is to shall try to obtain free estimates that might include evidence of online prices. It doesn't say we absolutely will get free estimates or quotes. So I'm a bit confused, because what we're essentially saying is we can spend, or officers can spend up to £5,000 based on one single quote. And the recommendation is only to try and get quotes. So I just wanted sort of reassurance really that we can have some wording that makes sure we get value for money, because I just find that a little bit woolly, that essentially we're saying we're happy for one quote for anything up to £5,000. I get the size of the council and the amount of money that we spend, and I don't want to create undue work, but I would like reassurance that we have wording that tries to ensure we get value for money.
Right. Alan, then I'll go to Doug and then David, please.
Just why they put that there is the smaller the value of the contract, it's very difficult. I mean, we've got to tender, we've gone out to get quotes for quite significant projects. And people's, some organisations are not interested in relatively small work. If their margin on the £3,000 job is £300, they might think it's not worth their while. And that's why it's seek. Whereas at the bigger amounts, you have to, you shall. So the distinction is really around the response. And we'd hate to spend our whole time chasing and only have two quotes, where it might take months and months to get a third quote, because it's just not in the interest of the supplier to contract. So that's why the model ones have been written like that, is my interpretation.
Could we not include some wording that at all times officers will seek to obtain value for money?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to create undue work, and I'm sure you guys do this anyway, and you sort of try and get, as many quotes as you can, and they're competitive. But I think actually what we're saying is we can spend £5,000 based on one quote. We as councillors are not involved in that process at all. So there should be a sort of safeguard that value for money is built into it. And the other point I was going to make around procurement is we had a desire as a council to have a local procurement policy, and I haven't seen anything in the financial regs that sort of enshrines our attempts to try and get local procurement to support local businesses. And I just wondered if there was an opportunity in the financial regs to include that somewhere.
Do we need to add that as an amendment, or just a note for to take away?
Might be an idea for Alan to come up with some wording.
Yeah.
Fine then.
So we'll take that and put it to the one that goes to full council.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Jefferson, please.
Well, I sort of half covered what I was going to ask about anyway, so.
You good? Thank you. Councillor Blackburn.
And you were talking about the shalls and the musts. I think, 60,000 for it to be a shall should be a must.
We've changed 60,000 back to 30,000. Town Clerk and I are of the opinion that the model financial regulation is actually wrong.
Yeah, I should have moved over to the right hand side. Fine. Yeah,
30,000 would be, that's our interpretation of the legislation currently says 30,000. We think Malcolm made a mistake in setting this up.
that's fine.
Yes, Sonia, please.
I've had lots of conversations about this with lots of other town clerks and RFOs, and they think the same thing, that NALCA made a mistake and it should be £30,000.
Great.
Okay.
And can I just check?
Councillor Jeremy, please.
5.15, what's the sort of practical implications of that? That's quite a significant change from £500 to 7,500. What does that actually, what would that mean in day-to-day terms?
It just gives us the ability to purchase relative to the type of things that we are purchasing as a council. Previously, it was 5,000. And it's just really just to reflect, you know, if we go back to when I joined the council in 2019, 2020, we actually had 5,000. If you think of how inflation has gone, it really just keeps track of that. I mean, the implication is, I think the town clerk would seek a guidance certainly from the chair. We wouldn't just go out and spend, you know, that type of money, but it's just the practicality, certain, you know, sometimes of having a bigger amount that reflects current economic circumstances.
I'm always cautious of that because these things are written based on the performance of current personnel. And then the personnel changes, which is less engaging with councillors. But the rules apply. So I don't dispute that the wording is there suitable for the current times. Actually, you know, we've had situations in the past where other officers are not so engaging with councillors, and actually, so I don't have a problem with it. I just think we need to be mindful of that fact.
Yeah, Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to go back to that coffee machine now. Because that would come in. We could have bought the coffee machine and no one would have batted an eyelid. So I'm a little bit now just thinking about that one. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that.
Noted. Thank you very much. I don't have an answer to that, I'm afraid, but I understand.
But, you know, following from Terry's thing about the current officers and everything is one thing. Planning for the future is a different thing altogether.
Understood. Okay, so if no one has any further comments on financial regs, I think we are just to approve them, but pending the rewording change that Councillor Jeremy suggested prior to it coming to full council. Yes, please do.
A point jump in, and this may be something that we talk about separately anyway, but it's just one thing that I was kind of curious about is we've got the section on debit cards, 9.1 payment cards. It's got excluded as the council does not use debit cards. Can I just ask why we don't use debit cards? Is there a particular reason when we use credit cards?
The reason is that they are so high risk because typically there's no limit on it. The limit is what's sitting in our bank account, and we have quite substantial amounts. We use credit cards, but credit cards have a limit. So we protect ourselves through the credit limit. A debit card doesn't necessarily have a limit because it's how much money sitting in your bank account.
Okay.
That's why we've adopted that approach.
Thanks. I was just genuinely curious about that.
That's a very good question. Okay, so as we said, financial regs, but pending the rewording change prior to full council. May I have a proposer, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. A seconder, please. Councillor Mitchell beat you to, I'm afraid. All in favour for the recommend? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? Nope. Fab. Thank you very much. Moving on, we are flying through this agenda. Either I'm a really poor chair or it's quite a small one. Item 433, the governance and risk management policy, which is an updated governance and risk management policy and appendix. The Deputy Town Clerk, please.
This is a document by law we have to table to council annually. I got into trouble last year because it was actually a 13-month gap rather than a 12-month gap. So I got called up by the external auditors. What we've done is it really just looks at a whole lot of risks. The point that I'd like to make is that the council is going through quite significant changes. We're establishing a trust. We have someone working in the residential estates along St. John's Way. But there's a whole lot of changes. We're just not in the position now to be able to quantify what those risks are going forward. The document is very much what we were doing historically in previous years, but it will have to come back to council in the next 6 months or so because we need to update those changes in operations and ensure that we actually are mitigating them and taking into account. So the document is substantially very similar to what we've had in the previous year, but we are conscious that we have to change it once the trust is operational and once we have a better understanding of what's our workforce are doing in the St. John's Way, because that has its own risks. but I'm not in a position to quantify those at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Any points on this item, anyone? Councillor Jeremy?
There's no red, which I always look for, which is potentially good. Are any of the new risks likely to be a red risk? And how do all staff contribute to producing this document? Because it's all very well, we as a committee and sort of senior managers being aware of the risks, but actually it's the people on the ground that are probably most exposed to the risk. So how do they contribute to the production of the document?
I think that's one of the improvements in terms of the new Class B risk. I'm not too sure. You know, we'll have to just do a proper risk assessment and look at those items and then report back. I'm not going to wait a year before we report back. We might report back in 6 months' time. So in terms of red risk, you know, happening in the future, I would be misleading you if I said gave you any reassurance or assurance that would happen. In terms of the staff, I think it does need a lot more work, and it does need a lot of engagement with the staff, and that's one of the improvements that we'll do in the next one that we bring to council in 6 or so months' time. We will actually have a look at that in a lot more detail, because risks do change, and as we're getting bigger and bigger, the risks that the potential risk that we're exposed to gets higher and higher.
Yeah, I think it was really refreshing to go through and flick and see the amount of already implemented, how many are ongoing. There's very, very few. Nothing's started or nothing's happened to them, which is quite good to see. I think we just need to focus slightly on the high risk areas. But Councillor Jeremy sort of stole my question, which is, are we on ball and are we on track of any low risk becoming high risk? You've addressed that one, so thank you very much. Any further points on the governance and risk management policy? Nope. May I please have a proposer? Councillor Blackburn, a seconder, please. Councillor Jeremy, all in favour of this recommending? Thank you. Abstentions against? Nope. Amazing.
Quickly,
Too late, we voted on it.
but that is I just love the way that it's laid out. It's just so easy to look at, and pretty colour. I'm not even very, but it's just so easy to understand. And thank you.
It's very good.
I was going to say, you were sitting there like Al Capone down at the bottom of the table. I was expecting a cigar to come out or something like that. Was all me. That was brilliant. Credit where credit's due then in that case. Item 434, the financial internals control policy, please. So we are looking at adopting this policy. The Deputy Town Clerk, please.
I think what the audited accounts regulations require is that the council looks at its governance arrangements and signs an annual governance statement. If you remember when we did our Session 10 training with our provider, they showed this particular document and said, well, this is really what we have to do. So what we've done is for each of the 10 assertions that are in this document, we've actually gone and shown the council how we actually go about addressing each of those particular assertions, those statements, and who is responsible for doing it. So the document itself sets it out. So, for example, in assertion 1, which is we have put in place arrangements for effective financial management, we have explained in the attached document how we actually go about doing that and all the various subtasks that we have. And likewise for assertion 2, 3, 4, right up to 10. We've added the assertion 10. You'll see it at the bottom there. We've gone through, I've gone through the literature that's been put out by the Small Practices Authority and put in all those things and ensured that we've done it. And luckily at our last corporate services meeting, we adopted a number of those particular policies. So it was quite easy to tick the boxes. We are compliant with it. But in essence, this document goes to full council, and this has to be signed by the mayor, and this has to be signed by the town clerk as proper officer to say that we have complied and can give assurance that we've got the proper governance structures in place. Well, if my tongue any further, I shall.
You're fine.
stop there.
Does anyone have any points to address on this item? Yeah, I think it's, for those of us who aren't data or governance or finance minded, I do think the way you've laid it out in the agenda pack has been a great help about the assertion and explanation, what we do, what the RFO does, and then what the internal auditor does as well. It's been a great help. So thank you for that. Councillor Jeremy, please.
Both the internal auditor and the external auditor, I'm trying to remember what they said in their most recent reports, but they were both fairly glowing from what I remember. And sort of picked up any actions that they made. I mean, it's all part of the control procedures. So, I mean, I always find the sort of monitoring of local councils to be a bit odd, like, you know, the council monitors itself and the town clerk and the RFO sort of essentially monitor themselves, but internal audit and external audit, I think, are really important. So we've incorporated their points that they've made.
So the town clerk, if the town clerk tabled the document straight after we received the main internal audit report and set out how we've addressed them, and we've gone through and addressed everything. The external auditors do a limited assurance review, and the only matter that they raised was that we hadn't done the risk assessment within 12 months, which we've now addressed because we're now on a 12-month cycle. The first interim audit for this year, the internal audit said it actually gave us quite a glowing report. I think he gave us quite a very good report, because he had seen we had adopted every single recommendation that he had made, and we'd done our own improvements.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's what I thought. I think that should, you know, it's a package of measures to monitor.
He comes again on the 30th of April, hence the timing of these meetings, to ensure that we get all our governance in place before that visit.
If I can ask a question about that. So this time, 1 or 2 years ago, following that meeting, they gave us a report which wasn't worded the best, and the newspapers loved that poor wording, if I may say. The glowing reviews that we will hopefully assume and get this time, I assume we're going to publish those on our social medias as well and get them out and promote, you know, the sheer amount of work and the good state in which the council currently is in.
Just to give you an example of how we've changed, our cash reserves are sitting at 683,000 as of in this financial report, whereas in the previous year they were down as low as 70,000. So that gives you an example of what we've done. And the amount of money in our bank account at the moment is significant. It's about 720,000. But it's got to fund 6 months of expenditure.
Can you help with that? Those are things that can be done.
We'll table them momentarily.
Yes.
But Alan runs for the door. Okay, if I have no further points on that one, if I can get a proposal seconder to adopt the policy, please. That's a Blackburn, please. A seconder. Councillor Wood, thank you very much. All in favour of adopting this policy? Thank you. No abstentions, no against. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to our last item now, in that case, item 435, which is a contract update. This is just to note, I assume everyone's managed to have a flick through and see what the updates are.
Really?
No, please.
This was tabled at the last meeting of corporate services in March, and the only addition is the stage electrics. If you remember, we had to come back with our tail between our legs because we had that emergency expenditure that we had to do in the electrics on the stage, and that's the only item that's been added. By law, we have to publish this, and I think this also gives the councillors the assurance regarding the procurement levels, because we can see, even though some of this expenditure, the top 2 items are way below the 7,500, we have brought them to council, and we have got that authority because it's the nature of those particular contracts. But everything is, all the big contracts, greater than £5,000, so keep down here.
Yeah. And does anyone want to speak on this item? It is just to note, but if anyone had any points while they were flicking through. Anyone at all? No?
Yeah, just a very brief one. Terry mentioned earlier about using local companies. TLC, that Thetford roofing company.
Cheers, yeah.
That's good, that's fine.
Anyone else? Do you want to speak on that at all? Or?
Sagewise are a local company. They've moved from London to Thetford. And intelligence station spaces are relatively local.
Ipswich.
Yeah, well.
No, that's good. Thank you.
If I can drive there, it's local. Do further. Okay, so this is just to know, I don't believe we need a proposer or a seconder for this item. We're just so noted. Thank you very much. And with that, corporate services closed at 6:54.